Yeah, but we can win the group stage matches. Again, this is English.
Oh, wow. Please don't get this up.
I know.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to ESPN's Football Forecast with myself, James Allcott, and my good friend Hugh Woozencroft. The Premier League season is over. It's now time to look forward to Euro 2020, which is in 2021, but you know what year it is, so we'll move forward. With this England squad, there has been so much discussion, Hugh. Everyone talking about who they want to put into their squad, but what is Gareth Southgate going to do? That's what we're going to dive into here. Of course, we'll be giving our opinions along the way, and we want you to give yours as well. But Hugh, we've tried to put together what we think Gareth is going to do. Run through this squad for me, and then we'll dive into this in a big way.
Firstly, let me tell you that the human waistcoat, Gareth Southgate, is going to choose a safety-first squad. So all of us that think England have this great number of players with so much attacking quality, they should go to the Euros and try and outscore and outplay the opposition. Unfortunately, England haven't selected the manager that is going to do that. Gareth Southgate is very much pragmatic. He's very safety-first. He will choose some unsexy names in his squad, and that will lead to a lot of unhappy England fans, I am sure. But I'm going to explain to you a little bit later why I think he's right to do that, particularly with a big tournament coming up and the players having played so many games this season. But what we tried to do was pick our initial 23. It's been extended to 26 because of that long season. But here's who we think that first 23 names will be before those extra names come added to the squad in a few moments' time. And I think, James, there are a few names here that are already going to raise some eyebrows, because if we start at the back, Tottenham Hotspur's Eric Dyer is a big question mark. Every time there's an England squad, it leaves fans scratching their heads wondering, why on earth is Dyer still in there? Do you have an explanation as to why Gareth Southgate trusts him so much?
I mean, I don't really, to be honest. I think, look, what happens with a lot of these squads, and it's for Gareth Southgate to kind of almost see through the noise a lot of the time, because there is form and teams do fall off a cliff. And I am talking about Spurs, and I am talking about Eric Dyer. And so that is why I think people are so unsure about him as a centre-back for England. You know, but him playing for England, he hasn't been that bad. He hasn't made that many mistakes, which I think is often the concern for him. And he has played in a back three for them, which is something that, okay, he hasn't done as much for Spurs. Look, me and you, Hugh, we both, I think, agree that he probably would just miss out on my squad if I was putting it forward. But Southgate, you're right. He likes players that he can trust. I think he likes the bulk of that squad from 2018. And I think that's why Dyer might be able to kind of keep himself in the squad. I think the centre-back positions in general is probably our biggest weakness, especially with Harry Maguire struggling for fitness now. And there's going to be a few conversations here about players that we're going to be concerned about them being able to sort of even make it to the tournament. You know, news coming out about Nick Pope in goal is going to be having minor surgery. What's going to happen with him? But back to that centre-back position, Hugh. How do you feel about it? Because there are a few sort of late runners in terms of people that could have come through and made their way into this squad. The likes of Ezri Konsa, the likes of Ben Godfrey has been wonderful for Everton this season. Michael Keane, of course. And, you know, Connor Cody is someone that we're going to discuss a little bit later on, because I think he brings, you know, that leadership as well as someone who's very comfortable playing in that back three. But out of these centre-backs, do you understand why he's gone with Dyer and Mings as the second two? Because Maguire and Stones seem to be nailed on, don't they?
Who else? I mean, that's the real question. It's almost like a much of a muchness for Gareth Southgate. You know, there are good players. There aren't great players in that area of the pitch for England. And so the likes of Eric Dyer and Tyrone Mings, they just have to be in the squad. I think he's trusted them. Firstly, Eric Dyer has delivered in big moments for England before. That experience at the World Cup, I think, will be something that Gareth Southgate will say, I have to rely on. That penalty shootout, the way that Eric Dyer finished it off, you know, how many England fans they had him as one of their favourite internationals of all time at that point in time. You know, things change very quickly in terms of form, but you're right, Eric Dyer, his form for England hasn't fallen off a cliff. And I just think Gareth Southgate is one of those managers who wants a group that he trusts, that he knows well. And so Eric Dyer, who might not play a big part in the tournament, will be included. I think that's another thing that you have to factor in, you know. Is Eric Dyer going to start a host of games for England at this tournament? Probably not. So there's no real reason why Gareth Southgate wouldn't bring someone whose personality they know and who they can trust as well.
Hugh, do you think that's a big thing in terms of Gareth Southgate is that he will, with a squad that is, not as young as it was, but is still overall quite young. Do you think he's looking to lean on experience in different areas in terms of like the rest of the squad, even if there's only going to be one or two that have, extensive experience in the starting lineup?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There is a good case that this England squad will have maybe 50% going to their first major tournament, loads of great young talent, of course. But there is the other side of this. You're going to go up against the likes of France, who, of course, have won a major tournament in fantastic fashion. How on earth are you meant to bridge that gap? Well, you're going to need some people in that changing room who, if they're not out on the pitch, can at least get the message to those young players of how to deal with the environment, the atmosphere, and of course the big occasion. So people like Eric Dyer will be included. I think Gareth Southgate, like I say, it's not sexy, but he's right to do that.
Yeah, let's move to the right back position, Hugh, because I think this has been the cornerstone for most debate over this England squad, because we've got loads of great right backs. You've got Aaron Wan-Bissaka is barely in the conversation. It feels like Kyle Walker, of course, been around for a long time. Reece James has come on the scene the last couple of years. Trent seems to be the biggest talking point. We've in our squad, we've not put him in here at the moment. I think that's got to be such a huge talking point. Is that how many right backs can you take? Because Gareth Southgate loves Trippier as well, who we've not even spoken about. At this moment in time, do you think if it just had been 23, we kind of have settled on that sensible choice? But do you truly believe that Trippier and Trent wouldn't make it to the tournament?
Well, we're going to pick our extra three in a minute. Let's talk about, I think, those extra three and who might be the added right back if there is one. But I think for the first two in our initial 23, Reece James of Chelsea, Kyle Walker of Manchester City have to be in there. I think Walker has been a standout. His experience, firstly, the ability to play on the right-hand side of a back three as well. But he's probably had the best season out of all of them, playing for Manchester City, getting to a Champions League final. I think they've been excellent. Reece James has been one of the more fortunate players. He was in the under-21s, due to injury, moved up to the senior squad, got his opportunity for his first cap and grabbed it with both hands. I think he's had a very good season for Chelsea. He's maybe tailed off slightly in the last few weeks, as have Chelsea as a whole, but he brings that added physicality. So does Kyle Walker, that tenacity that maybe we'll need in the right back position, given I think against the bigger sides, England will have their backs to the wall. That plays a big part in the decision to leave Trent Alexander-Arnold at home for me. I think Gareth Southgate will have to bite the bullet on that. He's already left him out of previous squads. And in many ways, that big furore over the fact that a Liverpool player who's won a Champions League in recent years, a Premier League title last season, isn't in the squad has already been done. The English media have already gone through it. We as fans have already acclimatized ourselves to the fact that Trent Alexander-Arnold won't be there. Of course, it would be a surprise.
Hugh, not all of us. I still think there might be a power play here.
But we know there's a chance. We know there's a chance he won't be in there, right? We already have. It's not going to hit us like a brick wall.
Yes, right. I see what you mean. Yeah,
is not in the squad. So I think Gareth Southgate, in many ways, has answered all those questions on Trent Alexander-Arnold and his form. They've been done. So I think he's already almost moved him to one side, cleverly in many ways, maneuvering him out the way before the big squad announcement has come. But for me, you look at those situations against the very best defensively. Liverpool fans will tell me Trent Alexander-Arnold is as good a defender as the others. Against the very best, I hate to break the news to you, he's not. He's just not. And Gareth Southgate looks at that and says, oh yeah, he can hit a diagonal ball 50, 60 yards. Do I need him to do that? Not really. That's not the first job I need him to do. He puts in fantastic crosses to the box. But is the delivery of Kyle Walker and in particular Reece James really that far back? I don't think it is. I think he's weighed up the pros and cons, and Trent Alexander-Arnold has moved down the list. And importantly, when he did leave him out last time around and he had to answer these questions, Gareth Southgate said something, we've alluded to it with Eric Dyer already, that I thought was really pertinent. He said, in the opportunities we have given him with England, we haven't seen the Trent Alexander-Arnold that we've seen at his club. And that's a big one for Gareth Southgate. It's not necessarily how you play in the Premier League when he's sitting up in the stands, but what you do in training and what you do on the pitch for him, because it's his team. And he just hasn't seen the best of Trent Alexander-Arnold. And as a manager, you can only make the best possible decision in that regard. So I wouldn't be surprised. To be perfectly honest, I watched Raheem Sterling breeze past Trent Alexander-Arnold earlier in the season as if he wasn't there. You called Ryan Mason a competition winner. He wasn't the only one on that day in particular. On that day in particular, let me stress, Raheem Sterling had him on toast. So, you watch those games and you think, what's Kylian Mbappe going to do? And that for me is the barometer. What is the best player in the tournament in that position coming in off the left-hand side going to do? I don't want to see Trent Alexander-Arnold there. That's just me, but there you go.
Liverpool fans are going crazy right now. Don't worry, guys. I've got your back. I'll talk about it a little bit later on. We've spoken about the back four for quite a bit here, so we need to move on to the midfield. But don't worry, guys. I've got stats right in front of me. We're going to be going through Trent a little bit later on. We get onto our extra 3 picks. I think on the left-hand side, I think it's pretty settled, isn't it? Chilwell and Shaw. So I think we move into midfield. And I think the big concern here, Hugh, is injuries really as much as anything else. We've gone with Declan Rice and Phillips. Phillips, we hope is absolutely fine after hurting his shoulder in the game yesterday for Leeds United. I think there's a lot of names there that feel very, very obvious. Mount and Grealish should be interested to see if they are battling out for the same spot, or what I quite like about the squad and the squad that I put forward was a little bit different because I had the likes of Trent in there. I had the likes of Saka in there because I think there is a lot of versatility elsewhere. You're talking about that with Reece James. Reece James has been playing centre-back for the last couple of games for Chelsea. I also think Reece James is a wonderful, wonderful midfielder. We just haven't seen him play enough there. So he kind of gives you that option for a second. I think the big talking point is the sort of second central midfielder, the one that's going to kind of press for the team. And you've got Jordan Henderson, the England captain at times, I guess vice captain at the very least when Harry Kane's off starting, and James Ward-Prowse. At the moment, we've not got Jude Bellingham in there. And if it was a 23, do you think Bellingham would have missed out?
That's an interesting one. That's a really interesting one. Let me tell you why. I think the 26 players allows Gareth Southgate to make more risks with a few players that have been injured for a while. Jordan Henderson, Liverpool captain. Okay, he hasn't played for quite some time. He's missed the last 16 games for Liverpool. And that would be a huge concern if it was just a 23, because Declan Rice has missed time out recently. Calvin Phillips has had a bad run of injuries over the past couple of seasons. Jack Grealish has been out for a long time, although he did start the last couple of games. So none of those players are running at 100%. And you think with Jordan Henderson, well, you can't bring a player that's missed 16 games, hasn't played a single match for his club, although it was on the bench for the final game of the season. What would you do if it was a 23? You'd have to say, I can't take that many risks. But the fact that there are an extra 3 players maybe allows you an extra midfield body, a couple of maybe a defender that could move into midfield, Eric Dyer. We've mentioned Reece James there as well, some versatile players. So maybe Jordan Henderson makes it on that basis, because he has shown in an England shirt that he can do the business. He's got the leadership qualities. He has all of the experience, and you want him in that changing room going to this tournament. So I think Jordan Henderson, in many ways, is the lucky player that's going to be picked in the squad, given the fact that it's been extended to 26, because it would have been a really tough decision if it was just the 23. But for me, that means that someone like James Ward-Prowse, high energy, great delivery, someone who's not at one of the big clubs at the Premier League, does make it in. Jude Bellingham, 17 years old. I mean, as great as he's been for Borussia Dortmund, if it was a 23-man squad, it would be a massive call to put him in there, particularly given the injuries to other players in the central midfield area. So look, it's an interesting one for Gareth Southgate, but I think based on that trust level with Jordan Henderson, he has to be included. Another name, a bit like Eric Dyer, who people will be surprised to see, is James Ward-Prowse. But believe me, there's a level of consistency that comes with him, his leadership skills when it comes to Southampton as well, mean that he's another player that Gareth Southgate will feel, I can take him. It doesn't matter if he doesn't start every game, whether they get the right attitude, right approach, right teammate. And I think that's why he will be included as well. So at the moment, England fans should be pretty scared, really, looking at that, because there are quite a few players who I think might have a few injury concerns in there, might not go into this tournament with 100%, maybe 3, 4, 5 of them. And those are players that maybe if they were 100% would start. So I think that is a concern, but I think Gareth Southgate is just going to try and navigate that through the group stage, see who comes out in the knockout stage, if England make it through, of course, in full physical fitness.
Yeah, I think it's unique this squad and this tournament, because one, you've got 26 names that you can put down, and second of all, I think you're going to be able to have 5 substitutes per game as well. So the sort of depth of your squad is going to be quite crucial. And I think the thing with James Ward-Prowse for me, we were talking before we started chatting on air here about James Ward-Prowse's successful pressures, second in the league for successful pressures. And I think when you look at that role of that spot, Jordan Henderson, Ward-Prowse or Bellingham, that's the kind of role that they're going to need to do. You know, they don't need to go and score the goals or create the goals, really. They need to be tidy with possession, and they need to be able to get the ball to other players and win the ball back intelligently with their pressing. And you're going to get that with Mount, who's third in the league for successful pressures. But with James Ward-Prowse, I think what is nice about him, and what, again, with Southgate, who can be pragmatic at times, is you would go, you're going to get 7 out of 10 from James Ward-Prowse every single game. And also then you've got those set pieces on top, where in this squad that we've put forward, if Trippier doesn't make it into the squad, someone like James Ward-Prowse in the last 20 minutes of a game when Henderson has run out of gas maybe, is maybe a really strong option that and offers something that Jude Bellingham doesn't offer. So there are so many question marks in this squad. It's absolutely fascinating to go through, and maybe less so in the kind of the front positions, because I think we know Sancho, Sterling, Kane. I think DCL offers something different, so I think he's going to be fine there. Rashford and Foden, I think it's another conversation. Grealish as well, of course, and Mount. But I think another conversation is your starting 11. Maybe that's for another week, Hugh. But in terms of the squad, that feels pretty settled. And again, I think some fans will obviously be kind of screaming at that 23 that we've put forward, that we think Southgate's going to put forward. But I think it does come back to what you're saying, is that it is a sensible squad, and that is worth doing. I guess the next question comes, and there are some cracking names here for it, is you've got 3 extra. You know, what would you do, Hugh? But I guess more importantly, what will Gareth do with those 3 extra spots, if that was the squad that he was putting forward, which we think it might be?
Injury concerns are a theme with this squad. So when we go to the 3 extra picks, I personally think Gareth Southgate will choose Jude Bellingham of Borussia Dortmund. We've already spoken about Jordan Henderson's injury concerns. Connor Cody from Wolves, because I think Harry Maguire's injury is a concern. He's a key player for England, of course, and at the moment hobbling through the end of the season, hasn't been playing for Manchester United. We'll see if he makes it through to Europa League final. I'm not sure. So that's a concern. And Gareth Southgate, like I said, will be safety first. He'll bring an extra player in defence, and in particular one who can play in a back 3, because I think if Harry Maguire is injured, England's system will include a back 3, and it will include Kyle Walker as well. And then I think Kieran Trippier, who, again, unsexy third pick, is a bit of an X factor, you know, if you've got an extended squad. But I think the trust level is there. His performance at the World Cup will suggest that he will be in there. And again, I just don't see that he's got the same relationship with Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's had a great season at Atletico Madrid. He's won the La Liga title. That's the 3rd time they've won it in the past 35, 40 years. You know, the credit has to be there. Just because you haven't been playing in the Premier League doesn't mean you've been playing badly. He's been a stand performer, and actually on form, he probably deserves it. So for me, again, a lot of great players miss out, and I know you'll go through them in a minute. But this is Gareth Southgate's squad we're talking about. The human waistcoat, I've already described it. Safety first, pragmatism. I hate to break the news to you, but that's the sort of manager England have in charge. Yeah,
and just to be clear, you know, Gareth, baby, you're the one. You still turn me on. And you can bring it home again. I'm pretty sure of that. What I would say, here's a question for you, Hugh, because I think there's so much criteria that you can take in if you want to when you're putting together your squad. And the 2 big ones for me, you've spoken about it, is how well you do in an England shirt, and then how well you're doing at how important form is. How important is form for Gareth Southgate in the squad? Is it, you know, percentage wise? Is it 10%? Is it 30%? Because I think that's when we're looking at some of these extra players like Jude Bellingham, like Trent, I think that's where kind of the conversation of form comes in. So how much do you think that matters to Gareth Southgate?
I think he will put the players that have done a good job for him ahead of the players that have done a good job for other managers in other systems in particular. This is still a football team. England still have a style. He's coached these players. He will want them to play in a particular way. And the ones that have excelled in the way that he wants to play are the ones that are more likely to go. The form that he will take into account is the form in an England shirt, basically. The form for your club, I think, is very much secondary. if someone's form has fallen completely off a cliff, it might not matter to him. It all depends on what position of the pitch you play in and the opposition you have for your position as well. It's a difficult choice for him. I don't know what you would see as being your first choice, but for me, there are very good players who are going to be left out, maybe because they haven't had the longevity in an England shirt as opposed to what they've done for their clubs. And I'm thinking in particular, the youngsters, Mason Greenwood, he's been sensational for Manchester United. Bukayo Saka is probably Arsenal's player of the season as well. I don't think Gareth Southgate will bring either of those players.
Well, yeah. So let's run through those nominees then for those 3 extra spots. You've put forward, what you think Gareth's going to do. You think it's going to be Bellingham, Cody, and Trippier. But then other options include Ings and Watkins, Ollie Watkins, that we haven't really spoken about. Of course, was in that last squad, got himself a goal as well. Greenwood is probably the 3 forward attacking options that you could pick as part of those 3. Trent and Trippier go in there as well. Lingard as well has been in fantastic form. Kind of goes into that conversation of, yes, it was superb, but he's tailed off a little bit if it comes to, if you look at the basic numbers of it. But Lingard, someone that Southgate enjoys, looked like he wanted to kind of bring him straight back in because of maybe his influence in the squad and how tidy he is as a player as well. And I think that's probably Saka, of course, as well, which I feel like Saka, in my squad, again, as I said, he needed to be in due to his versatility. He has carried Arsenal on his back for a lot of the season, and for him to be able to play in so many different formations and positions, I feel like Saka's a miss if you don't take him here. But my road is that I think there's so much versatility in this squad, and I brought up that talking point of form and maybe recency as well, because I think you can almost kind of pinch a position or take an extra player in a different position when you've got players like Reece James, who quite possibly will be playing a Champions League final as a right-sided centre-back, has played an FA Cup final as a right-sided centre-back. That then gives you a load more options. Let's get to
Trent. Who are your extra 3? Who are your extra 3?
Here's my 3.
Who are your 3? Tell me the 3. Let's go through them.
Okay. The 3 that I think that Southgate would put forward. I think he's going to go with Bellingham. I think I think it's undeniable that you've got to bring him. I think his energy is just pretty stunning. And I really wouldn't be surprised if Bellingham starts one of these 3 group games and becomes one of the big stories of the tournament for England. So I'm going to go with Bellingham. I agree with you there. I think because of Reece James and his versatility, I wonder if you can pinch a position there and you can take another striker. In my squad, I spoke about Mason Greenwood, but when I've looked into the stats, Ollie Watkins' kind of conversion rate, his shots on target, and of course his goals this season are much higher than Mason Greenwood. And the fact that Southgate picked him in that last squad, I wonder if Watkins could be a bit of a surprise shout to make it onto the plane that won't lift off because you'll still be in England. So I think it's going to be Watkins. And then the third pick, I think this was just all a beautiful play, just great psychology from Southgate. And I think Trent's coming back, guys. I told you I had your back, guys. Don't worry. Trent is going to be fine. I think Trent makes it into the squad. I'll tell you why. Because you've got that more defensive right-sided fullback if you're playing in a back 4. You've got the same with Kyle Walker. And if you're playing in a back 3, maybe it's Reece James in terms of that right-sided wing-back because he's been brilliant there as well. But this is a squad game, and this tournament is about the squad as well. And Trent, 73 key passes this season, which is pretty outrageous. He's 5th in the league for expected assists. No one's passed the ball into the penalty box more than him this season. No one's had more progressive distance with their passing as well as Trent. And I know, of course, that's within that Liverpool style, but Southgate put him out of the squad. And I think that was understandable because the form wasn't there. But since then, he has been electric for Liverpool, a Liverpool team that was finished and has now got themselves into the Champions League spots. And I think it was almost like a little bit of a test for him. I think he's shown with flying colours that he can do that. And as an attacking fullback that can go and win games, I think he has to go. He has to go. As sensible as Southgate has been and will continue to be, he has to go.
Saying. England are not going to be winning games from fullback. They're not that good.
But you can with someone like that.
You can if you're Liverpool. You can if you've got a team as good as that. England aren't as good as that. I hate to break the news to everyone.
But who's playing centre back for Liverpool? Who's playing back? Like the two centre backs for Liverpool are poor when we look at elite footballers. When you look at England, it could be quite similar. I think England have got a better squad than we give them credit for.
Who's the manager of Liverpool?
I like Gareth Southgate. You don't like Gareth Southgate. That's okay, but I think Southgate can do it.
Do you put Gareth Southgate in the same bracket of manager as Jurgen Klopp?
No, of course I don't.
Okay.
But what I would do is I would put Steve Holland alongside Gareth Southgate as a really good, intelligent pair. I think Southgate is often always the kind of, obviously he gives great PR, he speaks very well, and he does all those bits and pieces. But aside from that, I think often they work as a team. And so I think when they work as a team, there's a lot more intellect there. No one's as good, apart from Pep Guardiola, no one's really as good as Klopp. But I think if in a squad, when you're picking a squad, you've got to take Trent. You have to.
The main difference is Jurgen Klopp would expect his team, including Trent Alexander-Arnold, to go out in every game they can and dominate the opposition. England and Gareth Southgate know that in particular the knockout rounds, they're not going to do that. It's a totally different approach. And Trent Alexander-Arnold does not suit the approach of sitting back. That's not his game.
But I don't think we sit back in the groups, do we? I think there's the group stage and then there's the knockouts. And if it gets to the knockouts, then maybe you need Reece James. But I think at this stage, you need the group stage, you need an attacking fullback.
Yeah, but we can win the group stage matches. Again, this is English.
Oh, wow. Please don't get this up.
I know. Typical English confidence. We're probably going to get knocked out in the group stage, having said this. But what I'm saying is, Kyle Walker, Reece James are more than capable. Kieran Trippier, if he makes the squad, more than capable of playing a very good role, very strong role in the right back position for England during those group matches. But where the difference will be shown, especially Kyle Walker versus Trent Alexander-Arnold, is in those knockout games against the very best. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. The question for me here is that we've got 3 extra spots here. And if you've got 3 extra spots and that third spot is between Trippier, who we know he really likes, and Trent, I think Southgate, I hope Southgate gets it enough that actually Trent is someone who you maybe don't start in those big games at the end of it because you need more defensive solidity, which you get from Walker and Reece James, who we'd already put forward for Gareth. I think
so, James,
win a game.
What you're saying is you start your tournament with Trent Alexander-Arnold. England play well. Imagine this in the group stage matches, and then you drop him, and he's been an integral part of your wins in the group stage. Come on.
I think Southgate will play a very different team in all 3 group games, actually, which could actually be, the stick that we beat him with if they go out, because there hasn't maybe been that consistency. I just think you've got in that right back position, you've got different kinds of players. If he wants to go super, super sensible, even if you do want to do that, why take Trippier? There's no need for him because you can play Reece James or you can play Kyle Walker. It's the exact same player. That's why I think he takes Trent, because he's different.
I understand. But again, it's about players he trusts who've performed well in the England shirt. And he said it himself, right? I think Kieran Trippier, as I said, has had a good season. Bear in mind, he can also play left back. And this is a reason why I think Bukayo Saka of Arsenal won't go, because in terms of that versatility in the England squad, let's imagine they're a transformer. How can you move them around? Do you remember the old toys you used to have? Turn them from a car into a person. Yeah, exactly. Google Transformers. Well, everyone's seen the films, hopefully. Yeah. Jack Grealish can play on the left-hand side. So I've put him in as a central midfielder, a number 10, but he can play and has played very well on the left-hand side. Marcus Rashford, do you need an extra striker when he can go and play centrally if need be? Raheem Sterling has also played centrally for his club and his country previously. You don't need that. There is versatility in this squad without adding loads of versatile players who are individuals. Like, there are lots of players who can move around. Luke Shaw's played on the left-hand side of a back 3. Ben Chilwell's been playing left wing back this season. You've got Kieran Trippier. He's played wing back. He's played in a back 3 as well before. There are a lot of players there who can change positions. So in terms of putting people as your extra 3 for the reason that they add versatility, there is a big question as to why. I can understand if we had a lot of players in the squad who could only play in their position, and that was it. And you needed someone who could turn your team from something that's very rigid into something that's very fluid. But England already have a fluid squad, and they can move players all over the pitch. So the likes of Bukayo Saka, for me, they're not going to go. They're just not going to go at this point in time, as brilliant as he is. And as a Manchester United fan, I'm devastated to say it, but I don't think Mason Greenwood will go for those reasons that I've just outlined in terms of the number 9 position. I'm a big fan of Danny Ings. I would love him to go. I think he's a player that can score goals of his own accord from pretty much anywhere around the box. Dominic Calvert-Lewin's more of a 6-yard box player. I think Ings, especially given his added strength, to be honest, in terms of those final few moments, England desperately need a goal. They throw him on. I think he's more likely to pinch a goal for England than Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who I think needs a very good chance to score a goal. But even he misses out in terms of the squad that I think Gareth Southgate will pick. And that's because of the versatility of some of those players that we already have in there. So it's hard to break the news. I'm breaking bad news to people left, right, and centre. But this is the squad that I think Gareth Southgate will pick. And as I said before, I will say it again. He's being pragmatic. He's being sensible about 7 games that he's going to have to play and who's going to have the longevity in them. Yeah, it's a difficult call to make. It really is.
It really is. And I think it won't be correct for 70%, regardless of what Gareth Southgate's going to put forward in his final 26-man squad. Hugh, it's been joyous. It's been tense at times, but we all want the same thing. We want England to go and do very well in this tournament. I'm sure some of you guys watching probably don't want England to do well, but I'm sure you've got an opinion on it. Let us know, guys, what you think Gareth Southgate's not going to do. Not what you would do. We want to know what is Gareth going to do. Can you get it right? Let us know down below. Hugh, thanks for joining me on ESPN's Football Forecast. We will see you next time.